Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming, and welcome to the third in our series of Albany events with the candidates seeking to be our next mayor. Election day is November 4th. You all know that. Early voting starts this Saturday, October 25th, and I'll say, why I knew that, I didn't really know that in my kishkas, that this was now. Look, by all accounts, this has been a long and atypical road to get here, and really decision time is upon us. We always say, please get out and vote. Please encourage your friends, neighbors, your network to get out and vote. I like to think we're a community of people deeply engaged and that everybody will vote, but you find if you just look at the numbers, not enough people turn out. So please, it is a great civic duty and a very empowering thing. If you're gonna scream into the internet, please, I don't care who you scream to vote for, just please scream to vote. Our special guest today is someone who is no stranger to Albany, former governor and independent candidate for mayor, Andrew Cuomo. At Albany, we have a very deep appreciation for people who commit their lives to public service, who put their ideas out there and ask people to vote for them. We're grateful for the substantive conversations that we've had these past few weeks with Assemblymember Mondani and Curtis Sliwa, and look forward to the conversation and hearing from the governor this morning. Andrew Cuomo's commitment to public service has spanned his entire career. He was HUD Secretary, Attorney General, and our governor. Everyone in this room has experienced some of the ways the former governor invested in New York City during his time in Albany. There is no person who flies out of LaGuardia or takes the train out of Moynihan or hops the 2nd Avenue subway who doesn't appreciate what it means to have infrastructure worthy of our world-class city. Driving that kind of change is no small task, and the governor deserves a lot of credit for what he built. Now we look ahead to the next chapter. Who will be our next mayor? As Election Day approaches, we look forward to hearing Andrew's vision for the direction that he wants to take the city and how he will grapple with these uncertain times. We know enough to know he will have a strong opinion, and he won't be afraid to share it. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in giving a warm Albany welcome to our former governor, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you very much. Good morning to all of you. What was that last line? He will have a strong opinion and won't be afraid to share it. True, true, true. You get a point in life where you just recognize reality. Thank you all very much for the opportunity. And thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Albany, for what you have done. Thank you for really advancing the civil discourse and being a forum for probably the most intelligent policy conversation that we have in this city. And that's all you, and that's all Albany and your team. And why don't we give them a round of applause? I've been involved in a lot of elections. I'm older than I look. I was about 18 years old with my father, and went from there, probably been involved in 20, 30 elections. I was with Clinton administration, involved in elections all across the country, my own elections. This is the most important election I have ever been involved in. Not even close. Not even close. Every election is important, yes. Everybody go out and vote every election, yes. This one really matters and has consequences that will last well beyond the tenure of the next mayor. I promise you that. Because we're talking about totally divergent paths and theories. This is not about two people. This is not about two parties. Oh, you're a Democrat, I'm a Republican. This is two different philosophies of government. I'm a Democrat. I'm also a capitalist. We have a regulated capitalist economy. You see all this around us? All these buildings? These people came here because they're capitalists. I'm going to New York to start my business. I'm going to be an entrepreneur. I'm a capitalist. This election is the choice between capitalism and socialism. That is the choice, and it is that stark and that real. Zoran is a democratic socialist. Well, what does that mean, democratic socialist? Is that a Democrat or a socialist? Democratic State Party chair actually wanted to sue them to stop them from using the word democratic because he thought it was confusing, democratic socialist. But there was apparently no legal basis to keep the word democratic from them. But it reminds me of Jefferson and Jefferson starting the Democratic Republican Party. Democratic Republican Party. I'm with it, right? How can you be against it? Democratic Republican Party, which then gravitated to the Republican Party. Democratic Socialist Party is the Socialist Party. They are not Democrats. They don't believe what Democrats believe. It is a totally different set of beliefs. And the Democratic Socialists, unlike Democrats, we have a democratic platform, but like I don't even really fully read the Democratic platform. I don't pledge allegiance to the Democratic platform of the Democratic Party, and I will. Democratic Socialists have an entire charter that is all written down in very fine detail, and they require discipline to that charter. You don't deviate. If you're a believer, you believe in the gospel. And if you don't follow the gospel, you are a sinner. Zoran gives part of his income, tithings, to the DSA, 1% or 2% to the national and the state DSA party. So they are very serious about their agenda. It's not up to individual interpretations. And it is crystal clear and stark, frankly, what their agenda is. And it's frightening. My agenda is simple. Number one, public safety, because public safety is always number one. Before economic development, before housing, before everything, people have to feel safe. This Democratic Socialist Party didn't just come into being. They've been growing for years. Their influence has been growing for years. Part of their influence was defund the police. That's where it came from. It started during de Blasio. And they took $1 billion from the police department. We now have the smallest number of officers we have had in modern political history, because they defunded the police. I want to reverse that. Hire 5,000 police. You're going to have to pay more on the starting salary to get them. Stop the attrition, 1,500 in the subway system. But start with public safety. Affordable housing, there's only one answer, which is build more affordable housing. It is supply and demand. We have a 1% vacancy rate. And when I left office in the state, it was a 5% vacancy rate. You want the rents to come down, which we need desperately, you have to build more housing. And we know how to do that. It's just a basic function of government competence. It's also an exciting opportunity, because we're going to need about 500,000 units, which is a large number. I believe we can find about 80,000 unit starts within the first 100 days. There is some low-hanging fruit. There are rent-stabilized units you can bring online. Battery Park City has a funding stream that has historically been used for affordable housing. So I think there's about 80,000 starts we can find. But you're going to need to be building 50, 60, 70,000 units every year. But I think that's an opportunity. You can have hundreds, thousands of sites have to be going on simultaneously. And it's a big challenge for government. It's also a big opportunity. That's a lot of jobs. That's a lot of economic activity. So I'm excited about that. We have to change the relationship with the business community. And again, this was the growth of the socialists. Remember Amazon. Amazon was the metaphor. It was the canary in the coal mine. I worked for 2 years to get Amazon to come for competition for their second headquarters. And they agreed to come to Queens. 25,000 jobs, average salary $150,000 in Queens on a parcel that was vacant since my father was governor. It's hard to get people to go to Queens. I say, as a Queens person, George, as a Queens people, it's hard to get. Amazon is going to go to Queens. And it was done, and we won, and we were shocked. And the socialists said, no, the tax incentive package was corporate welfare, and killed it. Worse, they didn't actually kill it. They slowed it down in the state Senate. They had demonstrations and protests. I finally got it completed. Amazon came to me and said, we don't want to be here. I said, what do you mean? It's all done. I got it done. Almost killed me, but I got it done. It's approved. No, if that's the attitude that New Yorkers have, we don't want to be here. That's how we lost Amazon, which is actually more frightening. Change that attitude. Yes, we want business here. Yes, we will work with you on tax incentives all day long. Tell me how to grow. Tell me what you need. Travel the country, travel the world. I did as governor. Bring those businesses back. Yes, we will work with you because we need you, because you provide jobs, and it is about jobs, and it is about opportunity. And my agenda, we're going to have to deal with Mr. Trump. If Mr. Trump is going to do something that is harmful for New York, you know, you've seen me operate with Mr. Trump. I was governor, he was president. We went all through COVID. Nobody will fight harder or more effectively to stop Donald Trump from hurting New York. There is also, thank you. There's also, I think, an opportunity. I think there's an opportunity to say to President Trump, maybe we can do something good for New York. He came in here and took over Penn Station. By the way, like candy from a baby. Bothered me because the state had spent so much time working on redoing Penn. We had redone Moynihan across the street. We were redoing Penn, and we had an arrangement with Dolan to take the Hulu Theater. We had a whole new plan for Penn. And President Trump came in and basically said, I'm taking over the Penn project. And no one said boo. And by the way, God bless if he gets it done. And by the way, if he gets it done, I'll wager today, it's no longer going to be Penn, it's going to be called Trump. But if he gets it done, he gets it done. The DSA agenda is the exact opposite, okay? Government, on the economy, government controls the means of production. Their words. Government controls the means of production. No private ownership of land. Their word. Government provides the services for rich and poor people. So free buses, not just for poor people. There's no means test. Free buses for everyone. Free childcare, no means test. Free childcare for everyone, rich and poor. Government-run grocery stores, one per borough. Makes no sense, but that's okay. For everyone, rich or poor. Freeze the rent for the rent-stabilized units, which are about 25% of our housing stock. Defund the police. Defund, disband, disarm the police in their charter. Legalize misdemeanors. Don't enforce misdemeanors, which are all the quality of life crimes. assault, harassment, legalize prostitution, which would make a tremendous negative effect on quality of life. And none of these are new ideas. These are all recycled Bill de Blasio ideas, literally. What will they amount to? Nothing. Will there be more affordable housing? Freeze the rent? No. First of all, the mayor doesn't have the legal authority to freeze the rent. There's something called the Rent Guidelines Board that has to make that determination. Second of all, the mayor doesn't control the Rent Guidelines Board. So no, it won't really make a difference. What the consequence will be is it will raise taxes, it will reduce the police, it will increase crime. Those three things will happen. Well, maybe it won't be so bad. Maybe the state will stop him from doing those things. Nope. I know how Albany works all too well. The DSA controls the Senate. The DSA controls the Assembly. Carl Heastie has said that he supports the agenda of Zoran, so Albany is not going to stop the agenda. And then, besides the practical impact of crime, plunging real estate prices, imagine the publicity nationwide, internationally. New York City goes socialist. It's almost like a bad joke. New York City, commercial capital, finance capital of the world, goes socialist. I mean, just think of the effect on the city. You'll see revenue generators leave. You'll see government spending increase. You'll see plunging real estate values. And at worst, you see a redux of the 1970 fiscal crisis. I also think you'll see President Trump come in and take over New York. Why do I think that? Because he has said that. And not with the National Guard. He can come in and really take over. You know, he has federal funding in every aspect of this city and every aspect of this state. And President Trump taking over New York may be a great political sideshow with the socialists fighting Trump. Yeah, great news. The reporters will have a field day. But nobody's going to want a ringside seat to that. That is nothing but bad news to New York City. So the election really matters. Two specifics. One, Rikers Island. We have to figure out what to do and figure out what to do right away. De Blasio passed a plan, close Rikers by 2027, open 4 county jails. The 4 county jails are years late and billions over budget. There will be no 4 county jails probably in my grandchildren's lifetime. My plan is rebuild on Rikers. There was nothing wrong with the island. It was the facilities. Build new state-of-the-art jails on Rikers Island and provide visitation, ferry, bus for people to come from the outer boroughs. And then take those sites that you have, those 4 sites, and those will be the first 4 sites to jumpstart new development. Housing, commercial development, et cetera. Sit down with the community, and you have 4 massive sites right out of the box. Second, on the MTA, and Joe Loda is here. The MTA is the bureaucracy to end all bureaucracies, right? The subway system was the magic that made New York, New York in the 1900s. And when it is at its best, it is awesome. The inverse is also true. And making the subway system better, I think, could be one of the major, visible, tangible improvements that we can make in this city quickly. The MTA was actually ill-conceived from the beginning. It was set up by Governor Nelson Rockefeller. Really, it was a political play because he wanted to take power from John Lindsay and from the TBTA at that time. And he put together this monolith bureaucracy. We've had great managers there, Joe Loder, Jan O'Lieber. I've spent a lot of time there, but it is so big and complex, it's almost impossible to get ahead of. I personally took over projects while I was there. 2nd Avenue subway, the L train tunnel, drainage systems. But by its current organization, it is extraordinarily difficult. My suggestion is this. The New York City subway system is actually owned by New York City. It's leased to the MTA. But on a master lease. Change that lease, let New York City do the capital construction on the New York City transit system. The capital budget for New York City Transit is about $40 billion. The regional capital budget is about $55 billion. Imagine if you actually got that money working. Imagine if you could actually spend it. That is hundreds of stations remodeled, hundreds of stations ADA compliant. That is a massive physical shift in this city. And if you want to talk about one thing that can change people's minds and attitudes quickly, it is that subway system. And at this moment in this city's history where we're teetering and there's anger and there's division and people are wondering what the future is, an effective, large-scale government project makes a tremendous difference, not just in the functionality of the project, but what it projects. You go through LaGuardia Airport, yeah, that's nice, oh, beautiful, it's a nice new airport. It's a more functional airport. It also says to you, wow, New York did this? We can do this? I feel good about New York. I feel positive about New York. You go to Moynihan Train Hall. This is nice. Oh, look, here's a bar. I wanted a drink. But by the way, this is nice. We did this. I feel good about New York, right? The value is beyond that. Imagine if you walked into a subway system, you walked into the station and you said, wow, they cleaned the tile. Wow, they're changing, they repainted those walls. Wow, the ceiling now has different color lights on it. Imagine the psychological impact you could get from just that. And it touches every New Yorker. So, last point. I used to say when I was HUD secretary, cities are either growing or dying. We have to grow New York City. And we have to grow New York City now. And we have to make visible, quick progress to show that the future is bright. And the future is bright. All the fundamentals are there. Just clean up the place. Everybody wants to be here. All the young talent wants to be here. Just add the police like David Dinkins did and Rudy Giuliani did. Just clean up the place, build housing like you did since 1939. It's not rocket science that we're asking anyone to do here. Clean up the subway system, make people proud and feel good about walking into that. Take those B and C buildings, take them down, convert them, but just make a difference. Have thousands of housing projects going on all across the city. Every block you go down, you say, oh, here's another building, another building, another building. The future is bright. The future is bright, and the best is yet to be. That can be our New York. Stephen Rubenstein comes from Howard Rubenstein. Andrew Cuomo comes from Mario Cuomo. They made this place. They made the greatest city in the country. That's what New York is. And I will be damned if Stephen Rubenstein and Andrew Cuomo are going to leave their children a New York that is anything less than they inherited. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Governor. Is this on? Thank you. You talked about Donald Trump. Thank you. Looms large. Just announced you would pull over $15 billion away from Gateway and the 2nd Avenue subway. Can you do two things for us? Can you talk about how you dealt with him and governor when you were governor, and like what worked and what didn't, and how you might deal with him as mayor?
Love. I believe in love, Stephen. Give love, get love. Circle of love, the embrace. Embrace all. Donald Trump, I know a very long time, and we had tremendous battles, and we also did good things together. I think he's fairly straightforward in an interesting way. It's a negotiation, and it's about leverage. And it's about his assessment of who you are and what he can get from you, right? There's a personal calculus in there also. He takes a measure of you as a person and how hard he can push you. I think the last person he would want, or one of the last people he would want to fight with if he didn't have to fight with, is me as New York City mayor and New York City. It's the media capital, it's New York City, he knows people here. I am a pain in the neck to fight with, you know, I really am, on a lot of levels, and I know how to do it, and I was in Washington, and I was in Albany, and so I think if a fight could be avoided, he would avoid a fight. And I also think, you know, there's a flip to these things. He stopped the infrastructure projects, Gateway, and the other one. I don't even know if he knows he did it. I would have called him up and gone down and seen him. I said, did you know what you did? You stopped the real rail tunnel that we've talked about for 20 years that brings trains not to New York, to the entire Northeast. Did you know that? And they're going to blame you for the delay. I don't think he even knows that. So the engagement with him, full engagement with him, I think can be beneficial. And then there will be times where you're going to have to fight, or he won't respect you.
I want to push you towards a story I've heard you tell once and only once in private, which is you guys had a bit of a battle, you and Donald Trump, when you were governor, over the quarantining of New York, if I remember correctly. Could you just talk to us about that? And might that be a model? Is that an indication of how it is to deal with him?
Yeah, you know, when you tell a story in private, the theory of that is the private part, you know. Okay, let's do the edited version quickly. We're in the middle of COVID. New York has it first and worst. It's starting to spread across the country, just like it was spreading all across the globe, right? It's starting to spread to other states. He calls me up, Florida, DeSantis, and this is in the middle of the presidential election, and DeSantis is a competitor. DeSantis says COVID is coming to Florida from New York. I said, yeah, well, tell DeSantis to look at a map, turn on the news, see China, see Europe. It's not, well, he says people are going from New York to Florida and they're bringing COVID. and I should cancel the flights from New York to Florida. I said, well, tell him read the Constitution, interstate commerce. He can't stop New Yorkers from going to Florida. Yeah, but it's Florida, and Florida, he doesn't say, but it's a swing state in the election. It was the swing state in the election. I said, well, I don't know what to tell you. He says, well, I'm going to have my counsel call you. White House counsel calls and says, we are thinking of, raises the Florida issue, and says, we're thinking of executing an emergency health order that would quarantine New York. I said, what does that even mean? He said, the president can, on an emergency basis, say there's a health emergency and quarantine an area. I said, quarantine an area. So you're talking about like a 2-block area, 3-block area. What are you talking about quarantining? He said, the state of New York. I said, how do you quarantine the state of New York? We close the airports, we block the bridges, we block the tunnels, and you can't leave New York State. Now, this would have been effective politics for him, right? Because New York has COVID, everybody's starting to see COVID spread. Yes, quarantine New York, you can't leave New York. I said, look, you quarantine New York. We're in the middle of this hyper frenzy. Every morning I go on TV just to try to keep people calm, just to give them some information to calm them. You say to New Yorkers, you can't leave New York. The one thing they're all going to want to do is leave New York. You will create a panic where you will see people jumping in cars and doing whatever they have to do. And I said, by the way, how do you close bridges? With military. We'll close them with the military. I said, so you're going to have in the middle of the George Washington Bridge, you're going to have New Yorkers fighting with the military to get out of New York because now you put in their head that there's some danger in New York that is going to kill them. I said, it's a science fiction movie. And by the way, there was one that was almost just on that. I said, people will die. I said, I get your politics. People will die. And this is all baloney about people getting on the plane and going to Florida. He says, well, that's the law. I said, can I speak to the president? He said he's on his way to Florida. Now I knew we were in trouble, right? Because that meant he was going to land in Florida. He was going to have the press announcement in Florida. I called my counsel. We huddle. Turns out they can do it. It's all legal. It's right. What can we do? What can we do? What can we do? Nothing we can do. Someone who shall remain nameless said, I have one idea. I said, what's that? I hear the idea, I do it. I had the press right next door to the Red Room, the governor's office, because I was doing the briefings every day. I go out into the briefing room, CNN Live. I said, well, the president says he's going to quarantine New York State. I think it's unwise. I think it's illegal. I'm going to challenge it in court. But he's going to do it. I think people will panic. There's no reason. He's playing politics. But if he does that, I am going to close down the stock market. And there will be no stocks traded. I'm closing Wall Street. There will be no electronic transfers of stock. It will be the first time in 200 years that the stock market was closed on an emergency basis. I fear the stock market may tumble thousands of points, and people may panic financially and try to withdraw their money from stocks and from ATMs, et cetera. And I'm afraid of that consequence. As I'm talking, you see the ticker tape start to go, boop, 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 you know, they have it on the bottom of the screen. I finish that announcement, I go back into the office, I get a call. What are you, crazy? What you said, you panicked the market is going to drop. And remember at that time, everything was the market. Short story, he canceled the quarantine to New York, and I canceled the closing of Wall Street. But that's what I mean. You have to be willing to stand up and confront him, and he is a tough customer to begin with, and it's both on the substance and then about you. Are you willing to stand up, and does he find you formidable? I think he takes over if Mondami wins the way he says, because it's the exact opposite. He does believe he's a 33-year-old kid who never had a job, and he's a communist. And I think he wants to take over New York because it's New York. And I think that would just be mayhem. Mayhem in the city, because it would never end. It would never end. It would be a constant fight, and the politicians would love it, and they'll have big demonstrations against Trump and no kings, and meanwhile, business and residents will say, where the heck are we?
You mentioned Florida's a swing state. Let's bring that local and talk about swing voters in this election. You and your opponents have very different visions. How does Andrew Cuomo take people who've listened for a long time, know you, and in this final stretch, pull them towards your campaign and voting for you?
Two ways. One, there are people who just always voted on the Democratic line. People who say, I've never voted for anyone but the Democrat. And that then is a conversation that I'm actually the Democrat, even though I'm on the independent line, and he's a socialist, even though he's on the Democratic line. And he doesn't believe anything that Democrats believe. By the way, Democratic Party is a law and order party. It's a pro-business party, pro-growth party, pro-jobs party. That's the Democratic Party. So it's getting Democrats to come and vote for me, even though I'm not on the Democratic line, and Republicans not to vote for Curtis Sliwa because he's not viable, and life is options, and they believe Mondami is an existential threat, but they would rather vote for a Republican, even if the Republican doesn't have a chance. And my argument is that's then a wasted vote. Vote for someone who can actually make a difference.
Can I ask, since you mentioned Curtis, would you have a message for him at this moment in time?
It's not about you. It's not about you, Curtis. It's not about me. It's not about Mayor Eric Adams. It's not about any of us. It's about New York City. That's why we're here. That should be why we're here. And if that's not why we're here, it's God's way of telling us we shouldn't be here. Curtis will not be mayor of New York. He could cause Mondami to be mayor of New York. Those are his options.
I found it interesting, you cited a line about the means of production, and if I remember my college education well, that is from Marx, a direct line from Marx. I got, let's say, 5% chance I'm wrong on that. I guess I would ask you, how did that happen? Lifelong Democrat, and believer in take care of people, provide good jobs, keep the city safe. I guess my question is, you look at the drift towards socialism and ability to quote Marx, which doesn't feel very American. How did that happen, and what does the future look like, in your opinion, for the party?
Yeah. It's the polarization. How did MAGA happen? How did the Tea Party happen on the right? They're angry. They're satisfied. I mean, that's what Trump touched, right? That's what Mondami touches. That alienation, angry, the system isn't working for me. And blow up the system. Or blow up everything. And try anything new, because nothing can be worse because this doesn't work for me. And the Republicans, it's Trump, MAGA, Democrats. It's this socialism movement that, Stephen, this is 15 years in the making. People didn't see it, they didn't feel it, they didn't understand how organized it was. They thought it was organic. There was nothing organic about this. This is a well-financed, well-funded, hyper-disciplined organization. This is not a coffee clutch, you know. They planned those college protests. They knew what they were doing. Those college kids were not in pup tents. And they are now appealing especially to younger people. This system is terrible. Billionaires and poor people. Income inequality is horrendous. We can be better than this. Socialism is utopia. We'll all share our money. We'll pool our money. And then it'll be fair for all of us. We'll pool our money. Yes, a beautiful idea. Nobody should go to jail. Why would you put people in jail? That's so terrible. Just help them with their problem. Education, social work, that's the answer. Yes, utopia is a beautiful place. It's just not here.
You talk about public safety. It is a great concern to our community. I want to just drill a little bit on your plans for the PD. What's one thing you would do more of? What's one thing you might change should you be our next mayor?
More of starts with the hiring, and you're going to have to raise the salary to get people to take the job, because no one will take the job. You hire the staff, hopefully the attrition slows. More of respect for the police, more uplifting of the police, less demonization of the police. You know, you talk to the police now, they're quitting not just because they're so short-staffed they have to work all the time. They're the bad guys. They feel that they are the bad guys, that society blames them, right? Zoran wants to do away with the SRG team, the Strategic Response Group. Why? That's the police force that shows up when there's a protest. And the protesters feel that the SRG is too aggressive in trying to control them, and they should have a right to protest. So the police feel demoralized. They're afraid to touch anyone. They're wearing a camera. The new laws, you have to bolster the morale of the police and let them know that if they do their job, you have their back, literally. And we have to forge better partnerships with the community, community by community. There are 77 precincts. I would start each one with a blank piece of paper, sit with the community precinct head. Let's come up with a plan just for your precinct together. I say to the police, they say, we police the community. No, you can't police the community. You can police with the community. And that's all the difference in the world. So I think we have to develop those partnerships also.
You are governor, most powerful position in Albany. As mayor, there's a lot more of going to Albany to ask for things. How would you deal with the legislature? How would you deal with the governor should you be mayor?
Love, again, love. It's always comes back to love.
I feel like that's the theme today.
It's always the love offense. Look, I know I did 11 budgets on time, 2% growth overall. I know the budget process. They haven't done a budget on time since I left. I know what the state can give the city. I know what the city needs. I know what the fair ask is because I know both sides of the table, right? The state budget, state also has to do Buffalo, Long Island, etc. So I know what they can do reasonably. And I would just ask what they can do reasonably. Also, the city has more political power than it has played. The state has not been good to New York City overall. You know, why New York City had something like 80% of the migrants, just New York City. What happened to Nassau and Suffolk and Westchester and upstate New York? 80% in New York City? Why? This is the last place many agricultural workers. Why would you put them in New York City? Why did New York City pay the lion's share of the cost? Not only did New York City get the migrants, we then had to pay. Why? Smaller class size. Yeah, great idea. $1 billion, but no funding, you know. So the city, I don't believe, has gotten its fair share. And I do believe we have to make our case heard. But you have to be reasonable, and I know what is reasonable that the state can actually do, and I know what's unreasonable to ask.
You made an announcement about the future of the MTA and construction in an effort to build more. It's been expensive, very expensive for the MTA to build. You took a project in the Second Avenue subway, project people really had a lot of passion for here, took forever. Can you talk about that? Like, how did that happen and how that might be a model for what you're trying to do here? The
MTA, the bureaucracy, there's a bureaucratic mentality we all talk about, but it's much worse in the MTA. It is a closed system where many of the contractors in the MTA many of the private contractors have former MTA employees. And it's like a revolving door. You do your time in the MTA, then you go work for the contractor then gets a new contract at the MTA. And it's sort of a cozy circle. And the MTA doesn't get anything done on time anyway. So yeah, we're gonna miss the deadline, but so what? Because we never made the deadline, so it's not like anything is unexpected. It'd be unexpected if we made a deadline. Maybe we shouldn't make a deadline, because if we made a deadline once, then maybe people will think that we should do it again. So let's just keep blowing deadlines. And that's every project. That's Moynihan was announced in the 90s and named in the 90s. They just forgot to put a shovel in the ground. So everything is literally decades late. I mean, 20, 30, 40 years late. Second Avenue subway, I'm a new governor, they come to me, they say we need a postponement, we can't get it done, we need another year. I said, okay, you have another year. They come to me in the second year, we need another delay, we have a problem, there was a pipe, tile, electric. Okay, you have another delay, another year. They come to me again, we need a delay because we hit a brick and the rock and the tile fell. I said, hold on. I said, bring the MTA people and the contractors to my office. And they all come in, the contractors, the private contractors, and the MTA. And we're having a conversation, and I'm getting the sense from the conversation like the MTA people are arguing more vociferously for the delay than the contractors. And the contractors are affirming, he's right, we can't do it. And it gets a little testy, as you can imagine. And I then have a subsequent meeting with another agency that's about to award a contract, and they say we're awarding the contract to Acme Corporation. I said, Acme Corporation? I was just in a meeting with the Acme Corporation, and they're 7 years late on the Second Avenue subway. Why would we be giving another contract to the Acme Corporation when they're already late on an MTA project? I said, didn't you check the credential? Didn't you call the MTA? No, we don't do that. Every agency contracts separately, and even if you're bad at the MTA, we'll hire you at DOT. I said, well, that makes no sense. As a matter of fact, Get all those guys to come back into the office. I don't know if Bill was there at that time. Bring all the contractors back. I said, look, you're all in violation of your contract, okay? And because it was years past the deadline. I said, you're all in violation of the contract. This is what we're going to do. If you are in violation of a contract with any state agency, you will be debarred from work with any other agency. They said, what does that mean, debarred? I said, I mean, debarred. If you are late with one agency, you can't bid and win with any other agency. I said, now, I don't know if any of you are public companies, but you should check with your counsel. That may cause a disclosure requirement, SEC disclosure. We walk out of the office. My counsel comes up to me and says, what the heck is debarment? I said, I just made it up. But the theory is right? The theory is right. MTA calls up, well, you upset all the contractors. They're really upset at you. I said, so, all right, so I don't really care. Well, I'm telling you, they're upset. And the MTA officials were upset because they don't want the contractors upset because they want to go work for that contractor when they retire. It stews for about a week. They come back. They call them. They say, we want another meeting. They come back for another meeting, same group. I said, so? They said, you know what? We looked at the project. We actually can get it done on time. We don't need a delay. I said, really? What happened? The rock and the tile and the beam and the... We found a way around it. I said, okay, this is what we're going to do. You have to meet the deadline. The deadline was the end of that year. Just so we're clear, I'm going to schedule a New Year's Eve party and invite people for the first ride on the 2nd Avenue subway on New Year's Eve, which was the date of the contract. I said, so I'm going to have all the people from New York come down to ride the 2nd Avenue subway on the due date. And you better be ready. And I'm not paying a penny in overtime. And if you violate that contract, that's it on debarment. There will be a period of time, I'll be dead before you get another contract in the state of New York. And I'm going to come check myself. And I want to know how many workers you're going to have on site. And I want to know every day how many workers, and I'm going to go check. And I went to the 2nd Avenue subway every night on the way home. And I would stop at a different station. I would go in and knew all the workers. And we had a great, great New Year's Eve party. They all hate me there. All the contractors hate me. The MTA hated me. But we got it done.
Does not sound like a fun New Year's Eve party. But congrats on getting that done. I have one final question for you since we're at 10. Something feels different. I'd say when you started this campaign, I honestly was not sure you wanted to be mayor. I'm not sure I felt that. Something feels different. So let me ask you, why are you excited about this job at this time? Like, did something change? And just, is this job, I started by saying voting, it wasn't in my kish because I realized that it was early voting. Is this job now in your kishkas? Like, do you really want to do this and why?
Something did change or got worse. I am afraid for New York City. And I've never felt that before. I run for governor, if I win or lose, the state's going to be fine, plus or minus. I don't know that that's true with New York. I have seen, as HUD secretary, I've seen cities spiral and not come back. You start to lose revenue and wealth. you cut services, quality of life gets worse, and now that's the death spiral. I'm afraid for New York City. And I am New York City. You know, I live, breathe, eat New York City. My father dedicated his life. You know, I dedicated my life. If New York City were to diminish, it would not only break my heart, but I think it would be a horrific blow to this country. Because New York City was the laboratory for the American experiment in democracy. New York City was the place that said, we can bring all of you, Jewish, Christian, Muslim, we can bring you all together and we're going to forge one city and we're going to make it work and we're going to make it work together. And we'll put our differences aside. Sure, we'll bump elbows once in a while, but we're going to find commonality and humanity. That was New York, and I'm afraid of the anti-Semitism in this city and the divisiveness in this city. I have not felt that. I've never felt this in my life in this city, the tension among New Yorkers and the divisions and the wedges that are between New Yorkers. So unifying it, stabilizing it, and making sure it continues to grow and exist. And I don't know how to do a lot of things in life. Well, you don't want to hear me sing, you don't want to see me dance, you don't want to see me swing a golf club, but I know how to make government work, Stephen. And we are at a time in New York where we need to make government work. And that's why I'm running for mayor.
Governor Cuomo, thank you very much. And thank you all for coming.